Hello. So there was an incident on Question Time the other night, which is now being dubbed Quexit. That is because an audience member was told to leave by David Dimbleby. This is highly unusual. It's, as far as I know, never happened in the show's long history. A little bit of context for my international viewers. Question Time is a weekly program held in the UK. It's a roadshow program, that is to say, it travels around from city to city. This episode was in Plymouth, Devon, and the context is basically you'll have a panel, usually politicians from at least the two big parties, usually a third party, and perhaps another public figure such as some sort of celebrity or maybe a journalist. Now, I didn't watch the whole episode, and I don't know who the other panelists were, but I recognise Gina Miller, who's a somewhat controversial lawyer known for her attempts to stop Brexit, and David Lidington, who is currently Justice Secretary. Anyway, what happened here was that this man, who's being named as Steve German, had repeatedly heckled the panel. Um, I counted about 3 times. And at one point, the host, David Dimbleby, just had enough and he says, I think you should leave now. And there was a big cheer from the crowd because clearly other people were getting fed up with this as well. Now, I think this brings up a lot of interesting questions about freedom of expression and also how our freedom of expression can impinge on others. Let me just say from the outset, I believe that David Dimbleby made the right call. I do not believe that this man was being denied his freedom of speech, and this is why. A program like this sort of format, the purpose is that you have a panel, they're asked questions, they engage in debate, and members of the audience can pitch questions to them. The format has never been a free for all where members of the audience can engage in ongoing debate with the panel members. Everyone knows that. That's never been the context. Whether it should or not is another matter. If people feel that should be the format, then petition Question Time to make that the format. But that is not the format, and it never has been. Um, the way I see it is this guy was just behaving obnoxiously. His attitude was that he was going to go there. Apparently, he's a self-described Tory buster and a strong Jeremy Corbyn supporter. Now, the Daily Mail had an article on this, and I'm not going to humour that article too much because clearly the Daily Mail is biased. They were getting into sort of background issues. Apparently, he's had disputes with his neighbours, and I felt they were touching on a number of ad hominem attacks that weren't really that relevant to the issue at hand. However, they did say something which was factually true, that he stood for the trade union and socialist coalition in the 2015 general election. So this guy isn't just any member of the public. He's an active political, well, activist. He garnered 115 votes. Clearly, he's a hard left figure. Now, there's nothing wrong with people believing passionately in what they do. I would never say he's no right to be a socialist. He's no right to believe in what he believes. Um, And I also understand that with a program like Question Time, the nature of it is that people are going to say things that are unpopular, and you're going to get booing, you're going to get a degree of jeering. It comes with the territory. But when someone repeatedly interrupts, then not only are they trying to shout down the panel, they're actually denying other audience members the right to hear the replies, the responses. That annoys people, and it is selfish behaviour. It's completely selfish and obnoxious behaviour. Um, Now, if this was once, and it is interesting how the press are showing this in different ways, once again showing the partisan nature of this. The Daily Mirror, which is a Labour supporting paper, they reported it as member of the public kicked off Question Time for booing Tory minister. Now, if you read that at face value, it sounds like completely intolerant. It sounds like, oh, these wicked Tories are trying to stop people having an opinion. But if you actually watch the full sequence of events, he is repeatedly interrupting all the panelists. He accused, it sounded to me like there was more than one person actually, but he accused Gina Miller of being a Tory. She's many things, but she's not a Tory. Um, and it was just a case of shouting out for the sake of it. So if he's jealous that he's not on the panel, that's something he can take up with David Dimbleby. But to repeatedly heckle, this is not free speech. This is simply, well, technically it's free speech, but it's abusing free speech to hinder others' right to hear. That's a caveat with free speech. Yes, you have a right to an opinion. Yes, you have a right to voice an opinion. You don't have a right to stop others listening. And I forget who it was. One of the great social figures of the 20th century, one of those, it wasn't Nelson Mandela, someone else, said that when you deny free speech to the people, you're also denying the right to knowledge, the right to hear other opinions. So actually, what this guy was doing was completely selfish, in my opinion. People were attacking his issue. That's relevant. Yes, it is a bit true, but that shouldn't be the issue. So, the left are portraying this, the hard left, I should say, are portraying this as, oh, what about free speech? This is what happens when you criticise a Tory minister. The point is, he wasn't just criticising David Lidington. David Lidington was visibly irritated by it, which is quite unusual, because usually the panelists have quite tough skin and they don't let those sort of things get to them. But I could sort of understand, because this guy was just it was about 3 or 4 times he was just shouting out over the audience, and that sort of heckler, I've no respect for them. I think they're selfish. I think they need to grow up, and I think they need to understand that there's 100, as David Dimbleby said, I'm not going to let you take over the show. There's 150 people here. I'm not going to let one person just have their voice. So that's how I feel about it. And of course, the Corbyn side are going to be saying, to be fair, to be absolutely fair, there are even some Corbyn supporters saying the guy was being an ass. That's coming from some Corbyn supporters. So, this idiot is not doing himself any favours, and he certainly isn't going to help if he wants to stand for office again, because he's just going to look like an arrogant person. It isn't even about his politics. That isn't the issue for me. If this was a right wing conservative constantly heckling, I'd be saying exactly the same thing. It isn't about the politics. It's about the. Although I would say, frankly, this is something that is consistent with a lot of Jeremy Corbyn supporters. They think they alone have a right to an opinion, and I understand that we're now in a situation where we're almost back to the blue-red days. So the left are going to be very emotive about Tory government in place. I understand that there's a lot of things I don't like regarding the Tory party, but if you're going to say something, then say it in a constructive way. Don't just heckle people, because all that does is annoy other people. Most of the time, hecklers are not thanked for what they do. Most of the time, they are seen for what they are, irritants. Um, I know, I watch Question Time sometimes. In fact, the reason I don't watch it all the time is because sometimes people do say things that work me up, and I don't want that negative energy, so I don't watch it all the time. If I was in a Question Time audience, yes, there would be things that the panel say that get on my nerves, but I would understand that if I was to interrupt, I wouldn't be making my point. What I would be doing is just irritating the other audience members, and that's the issue. So I'll leave it there. But what I would say to anyone who's just seeing a little segment of that, this is not a case that he was simply thrown out for heckling once. He'd done it 3 or 4 times. And the panel, in fact, David Dimbleby was showing a lot of patience up until that point. But it was about 3 or 4 times. The guy was really pushing the boundaries. Okay, so let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.